In 2002, after spending a dozen years in corporate strategy, trying to convince General Motors to change its business models, I decided to start a consulting firm called GivingWorks to help organizations improve their social impact. I think it was Lester Thoreau, if I could paraphrase him, who said that strategy is about building boats for a changing sea. And in a lot of ways, I think what we see ourselves doing is exactly that, helping organizations prepare for a future which is quite different than the past they've had. These are the kinds of clients we work with, and I'll talk about only two. The first is the World Bank. If you remember, in the year 2000, we had the Millennium Summit, and out of which came the Millennium Development Goals. And it was a set of goals about things like reducing hunger, reducing infant mortality and maternal mortality, getting all kids into primary school, et cetera, et cetera. I got pretty excited until I started talking to a couple of friends in the World Bank. And one of them said, I asked him, what will you folks do about it? He said, we will clap and then get back to work. And I thought that was an interesting answer. But before you think of them as cynics, there were some problems with those goals. Most of those goals were actually goals we had set for 2000. Some of them were based on a baseline period, which was 1990. So when the cutting and pasting, we forgot to realize that there was really no data about 1990. But nonetheless, I started provoking some of my friends there to see what could we do about it. And we pulled together a group of people to start fleshing this out. And the question I asked is, if we did not have the Millennium Development Goals, would we want them? And that was a powerful question, because one of them said, well, these are global goals, so all we have to worry about is China and India, which most likely will actually make progress, and globally those will be met. And I said, well, let's move from a compliance to really, is that what we really want? And then the focus started around thinking about Africa. And it turned out that the goals were actually much more sensible, though far from perfect. But the biggest thing that came is we started saying, what do we know? And what we found out is that there was actually a great deal that we did not know. In the case of HIV/AIDS, for instance, there was no data on the Middle East, and someone said, I said it was a measure of our ignorance. Someone said it was a measure of our denial. So let's at least run some simulations to find out and bring this issue up to the forefront. UNICEF also, and in a way, the success of this was when we had, during the Bring Your Daughter to Work Day, when they started making the Millennium Development Goals as their topic. UNICEF had a similar crisis of identity. It was established in 1946. It grew rapidly, became, interesting paradoxically, a government-owned organization that became a very powerful and beloved citizen brand. And while UNICEF had started very much in a world of service delivery, emergency response. In 1946, South Korea, and Kenya were quite similar. But the world had changed a lot in a crop of new countries that had emerged, the middle-income countries, for whom the primary concern was not child survival, but really, oh my God. The primary concern was not, hey, woke some of you up. Primary concern was not child survival, but really child protection. And it was not about getting kids to school, but actually getting them to learn. And they had all kinds of things. And what we really figured out is that what happens if your countries evolve from really abject crisis all the way to highly developed countries. And the idea was that for a lot of countries that were very weak, but not in crisis, you had to really build local institutions and capacities. But for middle-income countries that had the resources, had the institutions, you had to get them to focus more on policies for children. And for the rich countries, where we had primarily focused on raising money, they had a new obligation, which was that because of globalization, you had child trafficking, immigration, all kinds of issues affecting children. We had to get them engaged, not just for their monies, but also for their policies. And this had very profound impact for UNICEF as it goes through, because they had to move from the idea of just boots in the ground to actually having expertise and being really much more focusing on the quality of the work and assurance that standards were being met and they had to work on system-level interventions. And this is, in a way, the satisfaction I get is from being able to work with organizations where they've been more enormously successful in helping them transition to even a better future. Thank you.